Boker Tov, good morning, and Shabbat Shalom. And even though it's a full week late, can I wish you a Happy New Year? If you've been around the city or picked up a newspaper, you know the kind that's still in print, perhaps you've noticed a version of a New Year's greeting, or maybe I should say an ad, which has been created by a local gym. It welcomes the new year, or maybe a better verb is that it celebrates the new year. Oh, you know what? Maybe I should not sugarcoat this. Perhaps it's best understood as chiding us, readers, as one year ends and another begins. And with some variation, it communicates its message in a rather poetic form. So here is just one version. It reads, "We don't speak January. It means nothing to us, because that idea is a fantasy, delivered to your door in a pastel-colored box. It talks about change. It wants you to start something when you should be in the middle of it." Yeah, Happy New Year. Now, I don't know if you agree, but I think that delivers an interesting truth. In terms of being mindful of our health and fitness, I agree they are best as ongoing efforts or projects. But who doesn't welcome the new year, or any new year, or the hope that there's room to make changes in our lives? Change is part of our Jewish DNA. From Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur, we set aside 10 days of awe just for that purpose. And we use the entire preceding month of Elul to prepare our hearts for necessary changes, things that we've identified within ourselves. And though our Jewish calendar has 4 designated New Years, Rosh Hashanah is the one that is embraced by our entire community for the hope it brings and the opportunity it affords us individually for renewal. And maybe that's why this ad caught my attention. It seemed to say, if one is not already in the process, well, then don't even bother to make an effort. So what then? Remain in a state of stasis? And oddly enough, that made me think of Jacob. In this week's portion, Vayechi, Jacob calls his sons to his bedside so that he can bless them before he dies. Addressing his children in their order of birth, beginning with Reuben, Jacob invites them to Shema, hearken to Yisrael, their father. And when I think of this custom, a parent sharing final loving words of blessing, I see that as an enduring gift. So let's listen in. Reuben, Jacob said, "You are my firstborn, my might and fruit of my vigor, exceeding in rank and exceeding in honor. Unstable as water, you shall excel no more." And we have to imagine that Jacob paused before he went on to cite his son's grave misdeed, which he could express only in the third person. "For when you mounted your father's bed, you brought disgrace. My couch he mounted." As Jacob continued blessing each child, he based his words on the distinguishing qualities he saw in each one. And here's another example. Simeon and Levi are a pair. Their weapons are tools of lawlessness. "Let not my person be included in their counsel, for when they are angry, they slay men, and when they are pleased, they maim oxen." One by one, Jacob took the measure of each of his children and held up a mirror reflecting a harsh and critical view. And for the most part, I find these words painful to read and even more challenging to believe that they are intended as blessings. There's a great irony here. Jacob's own youth was marked by deception, and yet he moved past it to become Yisrael. And while his name changed overnight, Jacob had to grow into it. Ever before him, the name Israel represented who he could yet become. Yet in blessing his sons, Jacob brands each one with their worst moments or traits as if they and he are stuck in time. In his eyes, Reuben will never be able to redeem himself, nor will Simeon and Levi be seen as anything other than vicious. Yet Jacob failed to see where he himself had evolved. As he matured, he grew into more than the child he had been. So why can't he see that potential in his own children or offer them that hope for change? A recent article in The New Yorker asks the question, are we the same people we were as children, or do we change throughout our lives? To answer that anecdotally, I think there would be a clear divide. Some might reflect on the many ways their interests, personality, and values have consistently exhibited a clear through line which began in childhood. And others may claim that they are absolutely not the person they were when they were young, offering as proof the many divergent aspects of their life's journey which do not seem to cohere. However, if we were to answer this using a Jewish lens, then we would have to say yes. Yes, we are both. We are the same people, yet people who have grown. Psychologist Meg Jay frames this progression well in her TED Talk, entitled Essential Questions to Ask Your Future Self. She notes that when people are young, they often find it hard to envision who they will become in the future. But if they make an effort to identify clear future choices, they begin to act in ways that lays the foundation to achieve those goals. Who we become rests on who we have been. Rather than a break with one's past, we can build on who we are in many positive ways. The most courageous conversation, Jay asserts, isn't about race or politics or climate. It is the conversation we have with ourselves. Let's look back at Joseph. Consider him as a youth, that little dreamer who was so self-absorbed, so coddled and favored by his father that he was scorned by his brothers. Torah says that his brothers couldn't even greet him or say shalom to him. And by the time Jacob's life comes to an end, Joseph has matured into a powerful political leader publicly and privately into a man capable of overlooking his brother's jealousy and animosity. After Jacob dies, Joseph's brothers were fearful that he would finally take revenge for all the suffering they had caused him. But Joseph was not the child they remembered. in a statement that resounds in every relationship that has been shattered and then rebuilt, Joseph says, "Fear not, though you may have intended it for evil, God intended it for good." Joseph's capacity for change remains so compelling that in the most recent version of the Reform movement's High Holiday prayer book, Mishkan HaNefesh, the story of Joseph's reconciliation with his brothers is offered alongside the traditional Yom Kippur readings as another model of forgiveness and change. So whether we mark it on Rosh Hashanah or January 1st, what is it then that we want to exercise as the new year begins? The gym would chide us to just keep going, keep chugging, knowing that we are a work in progress. And that is the wisdom that we want to hold close. Will we choose to be like Jacob, who has become Yisrael, yet has no recollection of how he got there, nor can he see the potential for change? Or like Joseph, who has become a man who is bigger than his brothers can even imagine? So let me wish you a Shana Tova after all. And just a quick grammatical note, the word Shana shares a root with the verb which means to change. Funny how our ancestors knew just how to turn that phrase. May this new year bring you the change that you seek. Chazak, chazak, v'nitchazek. Shabbat shalom.